Good evening, good evening. Welcome to Perfect Balance Power Hour. These are strange times that we find ourselves in, and with the pandemic, the virus, and the guidelines that have been put in place, just to ensure people are safe. Social distancing has become the norm. And, with the restricted return to competition, to training, social distancing is the theme. What does a social distancing look like at a live competition in track and field? To help me discuss, join me discuss, the issues around that regarding the protocols, the procedures, the measures that are taken. Gary Smith is going to help me do that. Welcome to the show, Gary.
Evening, welcome, Stan. It's good. Pleasure to be back.
Yeah, good show. Great of you, to come into the show. With a period that we're able to get the invite. You were at a competition today, were you not?
Yes, I was. It's the very first for me UK outdoors race. It was at the LICC at Lee Valley today. Yeah.
Could you tell us what is it that Gary Smith takes part in? What competition was it?
Haven't had an outdoor season, so we've just been kind of training and kind of working on stuff and that. But there was an opportunity to race today at LICC, which is the London Inter Club Challenge, which I think they have one or two a month. But that was held at Lee Valley, so I decided to go and just test myself, see where I was at. And it was a very new experience.
It did. It must. Before we get to the actual experience itself, Gary, of competing for the first time outdoors under the guidelines and under the measures restricted activity. Could we first know who Gary Smith is and what is it that you are involved in with the track and field?
Okay, well, I'm the current reigning 110 meter world masters champion for the M45 age group. So I'm involved in that. That's my main event. So I'm involved in that heavily. So yeah, like I said, the season for us was meant to start back in April, and I was supposed to be in Budapest yesterday competing. But due to family stuff and that, I couldn't go. So I decided to train instead and then head over to LICC just to test myself today and just have a run out, really. And just give thanks, really, that for the opportunity to race. That's what we do as athletes, right? We love to race.
Could you just clarify a little bit more, what is the M45? What is Masters Veterans? And what's all that?
Okay, yeah, you've mentioned the word veterans. It used to be called veterans. We're now classed as masters. So as an athlete, you're a senior athlete from the age of, say, 23 up to 35. At 35, you're then classified as a master. So masters is split up into categories of like 4 to 5 year age groups. So you go from 35 to 39, at 40 to 44, 45, and so on, all the way up to 100 plus. And you just compete in your age group against probably 4 years. You get in that age group, and then you move up to another one.
Okay. And what are some of your, accomplishments within Masters Athletics?
For myself, I returned to the sport after a long time off. I had about 13 years out of the sport. I returned to the sport in 2016. I returned to the long jump. I wanted to hurdle, but my body wasn't ready. Having 13 years out, I had to bring the body out of retirement. 2017, I decided to compete indoors and out, and I got a silver medal at the British Champs indoors. I got a silver medal at the European Indoor Masters Champs in Madrid, and sorry, that was 2018. And then I got a silver medal at Denmark in my first year back, and the second year I achieved silver indoor at the Worlds. I won the world gold in 2018. I've picked up 3 British Championship gold medals along the way. I've also picked up a European Masters Games gold medal and 2 bronzes as well. So I've had a busy 3 years of championships. And also, I'm not going to forget that I won 2 Scottish championships as well indoors.
Yeah, just top it up, is it?
Yeah.
For the Masters, you talk about coming back from retirement after 13 years or so. What was it like before retirement, and why did you have to come back? What did you feel you had to come back and then continue with the sport, in the Masters category?
Well, before the retirement, I was competing as an international athlete at a high level. Didn't go to any major championships, but competed for Great Britain and England. In my main event at the time then was the long jump. So I switched from the hurdles to the long jump at the age of 23. So I kind of had 10 years of long jumping. But at the end of my career, I was looking to make the transition back into hurdles and also the decathlon. And so I had a really bad accident, unfortunately, in August 2003. I amputated 3 toes on my right foot, managed to save 1 and lost 2 completely.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, that's an interesting story. It's always an interesting one when I hear that, someone would have put, their career, at a hold at that point in time, because, you lost toes in the foot, which was your takeoff foot, was it not?
No, it was on my lead, like with the hurdles, it's on my lead leg. So my takeoff foot is sound, but it's my lead leg. So obviously I chose to come back to hurdles as a Masters athlete. And so there's a challenge because I'm coming down onto that right foot where the toes are amputated. So I've had to learn to strike the floor slightly different. Still have issues with it now and then, but I have to manage it every day.
Yeah. No, that's brilliant. Thanks for that background to there. And then here we are. It's a new season. How have you been preparing for it before you went to today's competition? How have you been preparing for the season under the circumstances?
Well, regards to the season, in my mind, it's like if we get 1, 2, or 3 races before the end of the season, I'll be very fortunate. But I've wrote off the season as an outdoor season. So it's just a case of just getting out and maybe doing a few runs. Like I said, Masters, we're in categories. So next year, February, I move up to the next category, which is like M50. So with our European indoors this year being cancelled in March, they've now moved it to next year, but it won't be in March. It's been pulled forward to January. So our indoor season is going to start really early so that we can be peaking for January. So our indoors going to be starting around November. So kind of in my mind, I've wrote off the outdoor season. It's just a case of maybe just getting out and having a few runs just for fun, which athletics is fun, but there's no main targets for the outdoor. So if I get another 1 or 2 runs outdoors now, it'd be good. But for me, it's more of the fact that this is my last year outdoor on this height hurdle. So I really wanted to have a competition outdoor season, but unfortunately that's not happened. So everything happens for a reason. I'm cool with that. I'm just going to prepare myself for the indoor season. So that's my main focus going forward now.
Yeah. Okay. Well, what, in the summary, what was a post-race experience today? Given the limited and the restricted training that you have had under the circumstances, how did your body react to the competition today?
Yeah, today was kind of strange because, like I said, I was supposed to be in Budapest yesterday. I decided not to go. I knew that I was entered for the LICC, but it was going to be hit or miss. I weren't really bothered if I went, but yesterday I decided to focus on training. So I did a CNS session. So we did a lot of blocks yesterday, blocks over 1 hurdle, over 2, over 3 hurdles, and then back over 2s, done some sprints over 30s. And so it was quite taxing, and I didn't know how my body was going to respond this morning. So this morning I woke up, felt a bit heavy-legged, but I thought, you know what, I'm not sore, so let me go just in case. I could just treat it like, if you do a heats one day, you've got to do the full warm-up to run your heats. Sometimes you've got to run heats and semis at championships. And then the next day you have to try to recover and then warm up and run again. So I kind of used it for that. And more than anything, I tried to work on some of the little things that I was working on yesterday, which was new to me. and I went there today and ran. So warming up, I thought, oh, I wish I'd just stayed at home because the way my body felt. But I pushed through and I managed to get to the starting blocks.
We'll get to the race in due course, Gary. But let's focus on the main subject matter of our show, our discussion today, which is social distancing and how the whole guidelines, which we have seen in other spheres of life up to now, how are they being employed in track and field and in athletics, especially at a competition event. Let's look at pre-event, as it were. What were your experiences regarding the whole process of registration, before you got to Lee Valley, the event arena? How much did you interact with the whole theme of social distancing, and how did it look like? What did it feel like?
Well, I originally, before we went to the track, we registered online, so everything had to be done online. So that was the process. So we registered ourselves online. I had a few issues with my registration right up to the wire, really, the last probably 15 minutes, which wasn't corrected until then. So, but fortunately it was. So I was given the green light to race if I wanted to race. But I didn't really, to be honest with you, I didn't really read through all the stuff that was sent over because there's quite a bit of literature on it. But when I got there, it was a little bit of a surprise because when you got to registration, you just kind of registered. I walked through a door. You could only be there for a designated time. For me, it was 10 o'clock. And they would take you from registration straight to what they call a pen. So you'd sit in this pen for about 15 to 20 minutes, and then they'd walk you down the back straight to another load of pens, A, B, C, D, and E, I believe it was. And then they allowed you to warm up. For us, being hurdlers, they allowed us to warm up on the back straight. So that was kind of the very first experience I had when I walked through the gate.
And when you compare it to other live competitions, what was it like for different athletes? You say you have to arrive at a specific time. Was that the case with everyone? Was that for you, just for your race, or was it for all the events of the day?
No, that was just for my event. So fortunately, I'm a hurdler, so they do the hurdles first thing in the morning. So when we went in, it was only the hurdlers that were racing. So we had, like I said, we had time slots. So my time slot was 10 o'clock for registration till 20 past. From 20 past, they'd walk us to the back straight. And I had an hour and 20 minutes to actually warm up before the race. When I was leaving the stadium, I actually saw sprinters sitting on the floor or hanging about outside the stadium because they wasn't allowed to actually come into their designated time slot. So for me, I got there about 9:45, hovered about a little bit, and then I walked down to the stadium, but I was able to just walk straight in because I was one of the early birds. So I was straight on within 10 minutes for registration. So we did that. But yeah, strange, really strange.
Okay. Therefore, that's registration done, and then they've taken you through the other process of the pens. What happens after that? In a normal race, you have the call room. You've got your warm up, and then you go to the call room, and then you go to your event. What changes did you experience yourself?
Okay, so from the first registration, they placed us in a pen for 20 minutes. Then there was a steward. He walked us all down. They took all the pens. So pen A, B, C, D, and E. They walked us all down the back straight. Once we got down the back straight, there was the same pens again marked out on the grass. So we sat in them designated pens. Then we was able to warm up. They set out the hurdles on the back straight. As athletes, we were not allowed to touch the hurdles. We weren't allowed to hire the hurdles, move the hurdles. They had stewards in place to do all of that. And obviously you've got lots of hurdlers, but unlike normal races, you'd normally get 8 athletes in a race. But on this occasion, you were only having up maximum of 4 athletes in a race, because you'd have to have a lane where there was no athletes. So I was in lane 1, then there'd be lane 2, 3, then lane 3 there'd be an athlete, and so forth. So you had the A's running first, then the B's, then the C's, and the D's, and I was in the 4th race. So we were all trying to warm up and train together, and everyone's using different heights or different distances on hurdles for different drills. So I just kind of took my time, really, until 1 or 2 of the heats were gone, and then I was able to get on my hurdles and do what I needed to do.
Yeah. Okay. Now, it is strange times indeed, as you point out there. I can just imagine, when an athlete is used to a routine, of preparing for a race at a competition venue, they're pretty rigid with that, because it sets the whole tone. It sets the whole, just their whole it's part of them getting into the flow. How did you feel, and how did you notice other athletes react to the impact of all these changes relative to getting in the flow, ready for a competition?
Well, for me, I just tried to manage it the best I could. I tried to treat it as just training, not so much as a major competition as such. So I kind of just went through my warm-up. I pulled myself to one side. I didn't really go over to where the hurdles were. I tried to focus on my warm-up. I went through my jogging. I went through all my A, B, C skips and my mobility stuff and all the rest of it. I kind of went through the normal process, like you said. The only thing that was different for me was I wasn't able to do some of the things that I really wanted to do at the time slot that I wanted to do it. So I had to manage that. But I noticed that one of the stewards, what he did, he said, some of the athletes were going down before us, so we're going down in stages. I think I had to go back to the pen at 25 past 11 because I was racing at 11:40, but there was 3 races before me. So I think one was at 20 past, one was at quarter past. And I remember the steward saying, right, I'm going to take all you hurdlers down in the next 10, 15 minutes. Now, well, that was half an hour before I was due to go down. And I just thought to myself, why are we going down so early? But some of the other athletes got a bit like, well, no, my warm-up's till quarter past. We ain't got to be back in the pen till quarter past. So I ain't going nowhere till quarter past. That's what they're thinking to themselves and saying out loud. But for me, I just thought, I said to the steward, I said, are you taking us all down, or are you going to take us one by one? Or are you trying to just time management things? Time manage things. And he said, well, because they had to walk all the way back down, walk all the way back. So they were doing 200 meters there, 200 meters back. And I think some of them in the sun and that were trying to say, you know what, let's take them all down. But the thing is, we're all queued up down the bottom, and it would have been all out of sync. But he did stick to the protocol. And to be honest with you, it was managed really, really well. It was managed really, really well.
Yeah. Which brings me to one of the questions that I had here, which is, coming out of the situation that we are in, it's people are a bit tentative to go into events, because people want assurances that their personal safety, is taken care of. Did you have any such, nervousness on your part before you got there? And were your expectations met? How did that come about?
Nervousness regards to what? Like cleaning and all of that stuff?
Hygiene and all,
No, I didn't have any nervousness regards to that, to be honest with you. I wasn't too fussed about that, you know what I mean? For me, I didn't really know what to expect, and I didn't really think about it last night, thinking, well, what's going to happen? It was only when I was on the way and I was speaking to my friend, and he said to me, because he lives not far, he said, I'll pass over. And I said, I'm not being funny. I don't know what they've got in place regards to spectators. And he went, oh, okay. And funny enough, he did turn up, but they wouldn't let him in. He wasn't allowed into the stadium. So I wasn't aware of that at the time until afterwards, but he wasn't allowed in the stadium. So because of the COVID stuff. And the protection mechanism of that. But other than that, I didn't give it two thoughts really. I just kind of went there focusing on what I needed to try and do. Really, that was it.
Yeah. You mentioned there spectators were not allowed into the arena, and I suppose that's almost normal. We've seen that norm with with the football. Footballers playing in empty stadiums. How did it feel for you as an athlete? You like a bit of a shout from the stands, and that was not.
Yeah, it's hard because the only time I notice anyone in the stands, or if the stands are full, if you go to Alexander Stadium or if you're in Lee Valley and it's full, is when you walk in. When it comes to race, I don't notice anything else. I don't. I just see the track and just I don't notice anything. My mind's not on anything. It's not on anyone there or who's there. So today, it was something that I noticed more after my race because I'd gone straight into my pen, straight down to warm up, focused on my warm up from there back to the pen. From the pen, they walked us up the track to the start line, and then once the gun went, I finished my race, and it was kind of like everything was kind of like. It all had order, and so I come straight out off the finish line. We had to wait to show our numbers, look at the screen for the results, and then because they weren't going to publish them straight away, so then we went straight back into the pen, collect our kit. Then we had to leave the stadium via another little exit. So that's when I noticed. That's when I actually noticed. Oh, there's not a lot of people here. There's a lot of athletes, but not a lot of people. Some coaches.
Yeah. Okay. Listen, let's take a little a break here. But when we come back, I'd like us to talk through, your race today. And thanks for passing on that to listen. Yeah, you can tell the atmosphere there. It's just athletes and the hurdles. That's all the sound you're hearing.
Yeah, you can only hear hurdles. Well, that wasn't me. I didn't hit
any. Yeah. Now, talk to me through your race. From the start, from the blocks and maybe up to the mid race, up to hurdle number 5. What was happening there? Because it looked a very close race, and then the situation changed in the second half of the race.
Yeah, as you can see, yesterday I said to you I was doing block work, so I was doing some starts. So I was working on some things with my start. I executed it really well actually in the race. But one of the things I did notice was when I was standing at the blocks was the wind. It was very strong. And I thought, that's all I need, you know what I mean? Because my CNS actually felt quite depleted today. And it would have been not going to Lee Valley in my mind. I thought, well, they always run it with the wind, regardless, could have got two sides. But on this particular occasion, they didn't. So I actually run into like a 2 meter headwind. I think it was 1.9. So the 2 meter headwind. And that's quite strong when you're hurdling. But my blocks to hurdle 1 was good. I didn't really come off a hurdle 1 that great into 2. The guy next to me, he's a vet 35. He's new in the Masters athletes now. So, and I had some battles with him indoors. He's a very good athlete. So I just kind of tried to attack hurdle 3 and 4. And once I couldn't shake him, if you notice, he's probably just a smidgen ahead. And the other guy was a 20-year-old, so he's run actually quicker than what my PB is as a master. And I just tried to focus in on just holding my form and keeping it clean. through the race. And towards the end of the race, I actually felt my rhythm got better. And funny enough, Michael next to me indoors, we had a couple of races, and one of the races he pipped me by about 200, and it was off the last hurdle. He had a great run into the line last time and pipped me there. And then another race, I beat him probably about 500-600. But today, and because of my experience at the World Indoor Masters, where I didn't really have a great run in, when I come off the last hurdle, watching the video, we kind of landing around the same time. But I just made sure that I executed that last part of the race from last hurdle to the finish line, and I won the race actually by 500s today. So I was happy with the first part and the last part, but not really the in between. But I know I'm a bit flat today, so there wasn't too many expectations. It's just a case of getting out and being able to race and run over the whole distance.
In the middle part there, what's happening right there? Is that hurdle number 4? That's what we're seeing. That's you on the nearest to us. It's only hurdle 8, hurdle 9, and hurdle 10. That's when you seem to be coming through. Coming through that race. Yeah,
it seemed stronger towards the back end of the race, which obviously we saw at the World Masters when I won the championship. I was strong at the back end. But today, hurdle 1 was good. Hurdle 2 was poor. Hurdle 3 was poor. 4 was poor. Even 5 was poor. But then after that, I seemed to start to find my groove. But you know, I come away with a lot of things that I need to work on. But to be fair, we haven't been able to do much hurdle endurance, as in running over 8s and 10 hurdles and stuff like that. So I'm not too fussed. I was happy that I come away with a victory today. More than anything, I was happy to just run, just race. I haven't raced since like March, so that was just a blessing in itself. You know what I mean?
You mentioned something there about recovery. You know, hurdle 1 was fine, and then poor, and then there's recovery about hurdle 6. Now, that's not something easy to do. Usually, when you rhythm, that the race is gone. How did you achieve that? What was going on?
Yeah, I think after hurdle 3, 4, I started to lock into my rhythm. So because I was doing something new from blocks to hurdle 1, it changed my rhythm slightly. And it wasn't until hurdle 3, 4, I began to lock into my rhythm, but it took me to hurdle 7, 8 to actually get on top of it. So like you said, it's hard to generate at that end of the race, because usually you establish your speed and accelerate through the acceleration phase of the race. But my acceleration phase wasn't that great. I come off of hurdle 1 and didn't carry on running and leaning forward. But I think a lot of that was down to some of the mechanics that I was trying to do that was new. And there's no better place to experience it than in a race, you know what I mean? So yesterday it was okay, but it's all new. And you know yourself, Sam, when you learn new things, sometimes you take a bit of a backward step. So it was all good.
It is, yeah. Now, some people would say you are a master. What new things could you possibly be learning? You've been around for ages. What new things do you learn? What new things are you changing?
Well, for me, for the last 3 years, it's been more about working on my hurdle and technical efficiency, in and out the hurdles, and kind of the speed work and stuff like that has kind of been, I wouldn't say secondary, but it's not been as important as my technical stuff. But now I'm starting to do a lot more speed work, and I'm having to adjust to that as well, because I'm only hurdling once a week at the moment and doing speed work probably 2 times a week. Whereas before I was probably hurdling 3 times a week and doing speed work in between. So yesterday I was working on my body position in the blocks going into the hurdle, because sometimes I can put the power down. I need to be going across the floor at the same time. So I need to go across and in and out that hurdle like it's not there. And so yesterday I locked into it, but I didn't lock into it till right at the end of the session. And I got a little bit excited and done a couple more runs. So, because I didn't know if I'd be there today, but I went today, and my start was really good. I was really happy with what I did, but I just didn't execute the second part of it. So there's still work in progress to do, man. I'm always working on my hands, because I know my legs follow my hands. And
yeah.
Yeah, there's lots of little things to work on all the time. You can always perfect things. You can always become a little bit more efficient. If I can just gain 1/100th on every hurdle, that's like a tenth by the end of the race. You know what I mean? And you know yourself, at the World Indoors, I lost out between silver, bronze, and myself. It was 5/100ths. You can't even get that on the stock clock. It's that quick. So it's them little marginal things, and I'm always looking for gains, you know, because I've got to look at my weaknesses and my strengths. And I'm happy with how I'm hurdling. I'm happy with my rhythm, but I need to just get speed now, man. I need speed. But for me, speed was going to be the easiest thing for me to get in comparison to, or not easiest thing to get, easiest thing to learn, and not so long in comparison to learning to be technical over the sticks, because that's hard. Hurdles are hard. Hurdles are very technical.
Yeah. You bring up a topical discussion there, within the hurdling community, sprint hurdling community, which is where should an athlete's focus be if they're a sprint hurdler? On the sprint part of the hurdling or on the hurdling part of the sprint hurdling?
They both have their place, but ultimately, if you're a poor hurdler technically, but you're a great sprinter, you're going to have a lot of success. But if you're not as quick on the flat, but you're technically sweet, then you still have an element of success. But if you can marry the two and bring speed with good technique, well, then the world's your oyster, you know. But I think speed is the key. It's always going to be the key. So I'm happy with where my hurdle technicalities are at this time. So I'm just going to kind of maintain them. I'm not really going to strive to try and make them any more efficient. I need to now focus on speed, pure speed. I just need speed. Because with my technique, if I can apply speed to that, and I mean, for me, speed is gaining another 2 or 3 tenths over the 100 meters or even over the 60 meters. That's a lot of speed for me. So if I can now gain that speed and take that into my event, it pushes me right up there, you know. So it puts me in a different, even though I'm up there, but it just puts me on a different level for me. It makes things a lot. And I think when you're running at speed, the technical side of it's a lot easier. I always remember being a long jumper, and I remember when I had speed in my legs, it was easy to jump far. When I didn't have speed in my legs, it was such a fight and a struggle. So speed is the key, definitely. So it's an area that I'm going to be working on strongly now.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. Because speed indeed is the key.
I might do some sessions with you, Stan.
Hurdling is about speed into the hurdle, speed away from the hurdle, and speed in between the hurdles. Yeah,
definitely.
So you have those 3 components of speed within that hurdle race. It's just the speed to that hurdle, speed away from that hurdle, speed in between those hurdles. So speed still remains
the main key. It's the main ingredient, right? It's the main ingredient. Yeah. So it's all good looking pretty, but I mean, and one of the guys who's my compatriot or competitor, he's the best in the world as well. He's won numerous world championships and indoor and out. He holds all the records, and I think he holds a British record in my age group. But for the 60s, he does British, European, not world. But he's just a phenomenal athlete. But he has great speed. So over the flat, he'll run 7.3 or 7.3 for the 60. Whereas I'm like running 7.7, 7.6. But that's because I haven't focused on it. But now when I begin to focus on my speed, I know I can get down to nearer them times. So it just comes down. If you train fitness, you get fit. You train power, you get powerful. You train technique, you get technically sound. You train speed, you get fast. And that's where I'm at now. So I'm going to be training speed.
And that's super duper. Good to hear that. Now, tell us what the season is like. Now, this is your first competition. Are there any more? And when are they? What are the practices? Again, with the theme of social distancing and restricted retained activity, What does your, the rest of the season look like for you, Gary?
So we're into August. I'm scheduled to race in Czechoslovakia on the 16th of August.
Mm.
To be honest with you, I'm probably not going to do that one. There is another LICC which I did today. So as I explained earlier on, they've got all that social distancing stuff in place there. So I understand what the protocol is now. So there's that. So there's probably a chance that I'll go and do that because there's some good competition for me in my age group and with some of the under-20s that are there as well. I'm close to home. I've not really got to do the travelling and having to get all the COVID tests to go abroad and then making sure you got your invitation letters. There's a lot of hoops to jump through to go and compete abroad. But for me, I'm going to probably do this next one in August. There may be one more I might be able to do. I'm not too sure if we've got any. I think the British Masters was in August, but they've cancelled the championship. But I think British Masters are going to be putting something on maybe in September. So there may be one or two meets in September. So I plan to do another one this month on the 16th. And I'll maybe get 2 races in September. And then I'm going to be preparing for the indoor season because I'll start racing indoors in November. So, I mean, that'll give me probably a 6-week window in September if I do 2 races in September, maybe 5 weeks to go into whatever. Get ready for the indoor.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, if the indoor is coming in November, then you're looking at a fairly longer season next season, is it not?
Well, the Europeans are in January, so we'll still have the British probably in March. We'll probably still have the British Championships here in March. So then it'd be like normal. And I think the World Championships next year for my new age group, or the World Champs, I'll be doing the new age group. That's being held in Finland next year. And because right now, as we speak, I'm supposed to be in Toronto at the World Championships defending my title, but it's been cancelled. So they've moved that to next year, and it's going to be in Finland next year. So I don't know if it'd be a long season, to be honest with you, because I don't do a lot of club meets or things like that. They are available, but I'm just going to be focusing probably maybe on the indoor and the outdoor, and trying to peak for 2 majors is quite challenging. But with them being close, usually it's March and then it's like September. But on this occasion, I believe that the Worlds are in July, so they're going to be quite close.
Yeah, yeah. Which then leads me to another quiet component of training, which is recovery. Where does recovery sit in Gary Smith's
regime
plan? How do you manage? Because I hear races here, training there, all these championships out there. Where is recovery? What does it look like in your training plan?
Well, we do 3-week cycles in the month, and so we train for 3 weeks, and then we have a down week. Sometimes we test on that down week. Sometimes we just have a light week, working on light stuff, not taxing at all, ready to recharge, and then hit another 3-week cycle. So I am coming to the end of a 3-week cycle now. I think I've got maybe 1 session, but for me, like I said last time, nothing's written in stone. Like I usually train Saturday, Monday, Wednesday, but because I train Saturday and I race today, I won't be training now till Wednesday. I will allow my CNS to totally recover, which takes maximum, I think, full recovery 72 hours. And so I'll allow that to recover fully for Wednesday. That'll be my last session of the 3-week cycle. And then I'll just have a down week. But that down week is going to take me into my next race. So going into my next race, it'd be interesting to see where I'm at, because this last 3-week cycle has been very taxing on my CNS, because it's been lots of speed work, lots of speed endurance. And so it'd be interesting. But recovery is, for me, it's about eating well. I get a lot of my protein through vegetables and smoothies and things like that, and obviously hydrating. But tonight, my body's a bit battered today. I feel like I've been hit by a bus. I just feel zapped. I think it's more CNS than anything, but my body feels a little bit battered. So I'll be in a cold bath tonight. Not so much an ice bath. It'll be a cold bath, but it won't be an ice bath. Just to allow the body to recover a little bit quicker than it should do. You know what I mean?
Indeed, yeah.
I'm not looking forward to it.
Pleasant but necessary. Not pleasant but necessary.
Exactly. It does help. It does help. It helps massively.
It definitely must do that. You just mentioned it there in passing, nutrition as part of your recovery. Do you follow any nutritional plan, or is it just lifestyle nutrition? What does it look like for training, for competitions, or for life? Has anything changed there between Gary Smith, the senior athlete, and the master athlete relative to nutrition? What does it look like?
Yeah, I've never been a bad eater, so I think I look at food as fuel. So I look at it like every bit of food has its place. I don't really like junk food or eat junk food. So my wife's a good cook. She's a blessing. So she always cooks me good food, and it's a good job I'm training because she's a feeder. So if I wasn't training, I wouldn't be this light. Really, that means I have to maintain the trainings. But generally, for me, I like my chicken and I like my fish and I like my vegetables. But what I've learned for me, going into competition, that especially 2 days before and after, so pre and post, I tend to have a lot of like vegetable smoothies and lots of greens like spinach and broccoli and stuff like that, kale. I have lots of that stuff because I find that, I don't know, it just helps my body get ready to race. But I have a sponsor called Profound Performance, or Pro Guys. You may have seen them about. I've got advertising in that, but they are a natural anti-aging company, so they deal with a lot of natural products. I only use 2 of their products. One's like a carnosine, so it helps delay. It's called L-carnosine, so it helps delay lactic acid for training. That's the only thing I use sometimes for training. I use Nitric Pro, which is like, it oxygenates the blood a little bit, or gives you the oxygen, so it helps for the longer sessions, not so much the short explosive sessions. But other than that, I don't really take anything, mate. You know what I mean? It's just food. I don't eat junk food, so you won't see me eating muffins and donuts and rubbish like that. But sometimes you'll see me eating flapjacks or Jaffa cakes, all them little simple or complex carbohydrates to just get that little sugar in the system. So,
that's good. Now, let's hear about your views and your practices on strength and conditioning for masters. What does that look like for Gary? Your strength and conditioning. Is there a deliberate plan, or is that something that you do as you get along with the sessions, and you react to how the body is going, or you take the body through a rather stringent pre-planned SNC program, strength and conditioning program? What is it like with you?
Yeah, so over the years I've always kind of done my own programs or worked to a similar program that I did back in the day as an athlete, and one of my strength conditioning coaches, she had a plan for me back in the day, and it really, really worked. So she took me through, at the beginning of winter, I'd always do about a 3-week fitness program. So the weights would be very light. I'd do it 3 times a week. It'd be power cleans, it'd be heave press, it'd be squats, it'd be bench. And we'd do probably 2 sets of 30 reps on each exercise. Weren't lots of weight. We'd do that for 3 weeks just to get conditioned and all that. I found that in that phase, I was very sharp, very live, very quick. And then I'd go into a strength phase where we'd be doing reps of 8s to 10 at about 75% of our 1 rep max. And I would do that probably 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And I would do that right through for about 4 to 5 weeks. And then we'd go into a power phase where we're doing 1s, 2s, 3s and stuff like that. and then we'd go into, when the season indoors would start, we'd then begin a maintenance. So I kind of, over the years, I've always tapped back into that because I know the benefits of it, because I did it. I got super strong. I could tell when I was at my lightest and sharpest with the fitness, but I wasn't strong. And then when I was in the strength mode, I was strong and had lots of hypertrophy, but I was like a cart horse, so I was robotic. And then in the power phase, it was good. And then the maintenance phase was good because I'd got a lot of results indoors. Now, going into the World Indoors last year, I got on board a personal trainer who I know is very explosive. He works with explosive training and weights, and he developed me a program. And I worked to that through the winter program then. So this winter just gone, going into the indoor, I kind of picked and chose bits out of it which I knew worked for me. And so this winter will be the same. I'll go into probably 3 weeks of conditioning. I've got to time it right because this season's funny, and we've kind of been, even though I haven't really raced, it's been a bit of a winter training in the summer season. Yes. So we've been putting a lot of the donkey work in. So I may cut it down, may do 2 weeks of conditioning and then a couple of weeks of strength, and then get into the power stuff and really start to look towards the indoor. But on the flip side, not being able to do weights I haven't done weights since March. I found that I'm a lot quicker. I feel a lot lighter, a lot quicker. I went to the gym last weekend and I found that I hadn't really lost much power. So I tested myself on some of the weights and I hadn't lost a lot of power. I was working at about 80%, but I hadn't lost a lot of power. So I don't know. I don't know if I'm learning something new about myself or whether weights does actually have its place. And my training's been more plyometric based. So it might be a bit more complex training, between the weights and mixing it with plyometrics, or cutting my sessions down, or maybe just having a block going into the winter where I just get strong and then come off the weights, knowing that I've had 6 months now or whatever it is since March, and it's not really affected me in a negative way. So it may be, I don't know, we'll have to sit down and work that out.
Yeah. How long of the recovery are you going to give yourself, Gary, between the end of this season and the beginning and your pre-indoor season, the start of the pre-indoor season? What is that going to look like?
You know what? There might not be much of a break. It may be as little as 10 days because I haven't raced. Until today, I haven't raced. So although we training is a completely different level to racing. When you think you come out the indoor season and then you start racing again around April, May, and you're racing 2 or 3 times a month right through to August, September, that's very taxing. You need that break at the end of the season, maybe 3 weeks. You need that break. But to be honest with you, I've not raced. So it will be a case of just listening to the body and maybe having that 10-day break and having a little holiday or a little break with the family and doing what we can do, and then just get back to the work, mate.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, talk about race. You were at a race today, and the main focus of our discussion here was what social distancing looks like at a race. I'm just going to play that race again. And after that, I'd like you to just summarize for us your experiences today, from a social distancing point of view, the procedures, the protocols. What can people expect when they go to competition based on your own experiences today? People who have expectations and are looking for assurances, what would you share with them from your own experiences, from what from the rest from the rest that you were able to go to today?
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So, Gary, yes, what can people expect, going into a face-to-face competition, a physical event competition, regards social distancing? What were your experiences today at Lee Valley?
Well, initially it was a bit of a shock because it's all new and different. Like you said in the beginning, we as athletes we have a plan. We have a way we warm up. We warm up the same way in training, and then we take that same warm up into competition so that we can keep it all familiar and the same. Uh, that is compromised in a way because you can't just wander around. You can't just do what you want. You got to be. It's like the call area. You're sitting in the call area straight away. Uh, so you got to manage that, and I think everyone will manage that differently. Uh, they have order, they have guidelines, and you've got to stick to the order and guidelines. Fortunately, they didn't have to wear masks and things like that, but it it was strange, and everything's not on your time scale. Everything's on their time scale. So you're kind of your hands are tied. So you need to learn to that. And I think the more, I suppose, local competitions that have this type of scenario in place will make you more familiar with it. And it may become the norm, I don't know. But for now, it's something that you have to learn to adjust to. Because if you don't or don't adjust quickly, it can affect your race. For me, you always have to run your own race. It's never about running against anyone else. And in my event, it's so different because you as you heard in the video, you've got people hitting hurdles and they can be a distraction. But you're so used to having someone next to you that was strange, not having anyone next to you. But like I said, I thought the benefits from today was it felt like a training run, as if I set out 10 hurdles on my own at the track. That's how it actually felt. And that's quite difficult to do because there's not really that much adrenaline going on. So that was the strange probably thing, because usually if there's 8 of you lined up, you got that adrenaline going and you're all racing. But it was strange. It didn't feel like you was racing today. It felt like a training run. But like I said, you always have to run your own race. So that was probably one of the positive things, having to just focus on my lane, focus on my race, and focus on executing the things that I wanted to execute. So yeah, different.
Yeah, there are parents there who are eager, for their, for their children, for their young ones to go out and, get a race or two under their belt before the competition, right before the season comes to an end. What advice would you give them, relative to social distancing and your experiences today?
Well, based on today, you're not going to be able to go and spectate. Coaches were allowed, but I think coaches and one athlete. I don't think they was allowed to go with 2, 3, 4, 5 athletes. Coaches and one athlete, and they had to social distance. They had to be in one area. Athletes were in another area, and I think it's good for the younger athletes really, because you should get used to that. Because when you go to major championships or big competitions, you got to learn to not have your coach there. Your coach can't hold your hand all the time. So I think for the younger ones, it's going to be new for some of them that have always had the coach in the warm-up area, watching them push out or watching them do drills or whatever. In that sense, it might be quite challenging and new and different. But for someone like myself, we're used to getting to track, doing our own thing, getting on with it. But even still, for me, it was different. But I thought, what, new is different, new is good. So, like I said, there was no pressure. It weren't a major championship. I don't know what that would be like at a major championship. Running heats and only 4 people allowed to race, and let's see what happens along the line. But I'm prepared for it mentally now. I know what to expect when I go back to the next one. I don't know if all competitions will be like that. I think the British Masters Championships or Masters could do something like that. It was run really well. Speaking to the steward, one of the stewards, who I think organised the meeting, he said he was looking forward to the meeting. A lot went into place to have the meeting, because like us athletes, we like to compete. They like to steward and they like to be part of the athletics. He told me he runs up to 80 competitions a year usually. So it's different for everyone, you know. And I think you just got to be patient with the staff, with the stewards, because they're turning out, they're helping out, they're doing a great job. They don't have to, but they're doing it for us. And so I think we need to just be compliant and be patient and learn to adapt quickly.
Mm, mm, mm. No, wise words there, and very generous and kind words as well there, Gary. What two things would you advise then, parents, athletes, coaches, in view of pre-race preparation with social distancing, and then post-race preparation with social distancing as it is, based on your experience today? What would you be advising coaches and athletes, regarding that?
Well, kind of. For me, like I said, I didn't read through the paperwork, right? If I read through the paperwork, I'd have probably been a lot more aware of what was going on. But I did just adapt to the surroundings, a bit like a chameleon. But I would say, if you're entering a competition in the UK now, based on what happened today, get yourself familiar with the rules and regulations that are in place. Most definitely. Don't try to push it in the sense that you want to get, well, it's just me, let me squeeze in, I'm not going to, you know what I mean? These things are in place so that we're able to compete, because if they're not in place, we're not allowed to compete. And so for the athletes, get yourself familiar also with all this protocol, what's going on at competitions, know exactly what's what, so that when you get there, it's not a shell shock and you're not having to now deal with that as well as deal with competing. Just get yourself familiar and kind of, go through the process. For me, my registration was at 10 o'clock. Make sure you're there for the time of registration, because it's a short window. Make sure you're there for 10. Mine was 10. Make sure I'm there for 10 so that I'm in the pen, so that I can be taken out of the pen at 20 past and so forth, because it's not on our timetable, it's on theirs. And they have to run a strict timetable to enable everybody to race. So, yeah, that would be based on today. That's what I would say. Get yourself familiar with protocol, guidelines, what they've got in place, because every competition may be different. This might not necessarily be a blueprint for another competition. They may do it slightly different. So that's what I'd be telling myself. Listen, make sure you read through the paperwork.
Indeed. Gary, what's left for me is to thank you for your time and for all the information you've passed on, first-hand information based from what you experienced at a competition today. Not even yesterday, today.
Yeah, today.
That's hot off the press right there. Thank you very much for coming along. Yeah.
Yeah. Listen, thank you for inviting me again. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure.
It is. Yeah. Well, it's good night from me.
And good night.